Right, good evening all. Welcome to another NKF webinar. This one's looking at home delivery of medication for kidney patients. Our speaker tonight is Timothy Chaplin. He's Customer Success Manager. So we are recording this and you will be able to watch again afterwards. As usual with these webinars, what we're going to do is put the chat page up. If you do want to ask a question, put it in the chat and then I'll read it out to Tim and who should be able to answer all your questions. So I'm going to hand you over to Tim now to tell you all about the delivery services.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, and I see you put the record on, which is brilliant. So for future generations to listen back to this. So I'm going to share my screen, everyone. Welcome and thank you for inviting me along. I'm going to share my screen because I've got some slides that we can walk through tonight. And as Pete said, we can do questions afterwards. Okay. So Pete, can you see my slides?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. So just a little bit about myself. So my name's Timothy Chaplin. I work for an organization called Sciensus, but today I'm going to talk about Sciensus, but I'm going to talk about the whole home care industry and how it supports patients within the United Kingdom and you know, understanding how home care works and how it can support you as patients on your journey. My background is quite varied. I just thought I'd put this up here so you can understand where I've come from. And I'll talk about a bit of rationale why I'm working for a home care organisation a little bit later on. But I studied economics at university and worked in the City of London for a long time in banking. And then I spent about 13 years working in the pharmaceutical industry. And that journey actually took me on to working for the National Rheumatoid Arthritis Society. For the last 2 years, I've been working for them. I was head of services for them, and they are a patient-led organisation, charity that supports people living with and the carers of people living with rheumatoid arthritis. And for the last 5 weeks, I've actually been working at Sciensus, so I'm fairly new, but do have an understanding of the home care system. Okay, so just really what is home care? So the idea of home care is that it provides specialist medicines, and by providing those specialist medicines in a medium that can be delivered to patients in their home, it gives those patients better choice and better access to patients. So home care companies will supply medicines that people living with kidney disease or a whole host of different therapy areas. But the home care services can also provide associated services with that. So they can supply nursing support if your medicines need to be infused. The home care companies can also supply that medicine support as well. So the idea of home care was really brought about. One of the reasons was to take the medicines to the patient in their home rather than the patient having to go to the medicines. Primarily, home care medicines are those that are administered by your secondary care environment. So those medicines that are given out through the hospital pharmacy, not through your local GP. So historically, what would happen is a patient would have to go into a hospital and pick up those medicines. And this was proving logistically quite hard for obviously the hospitals, but we all know how hard it is to park at a hospital. And can you imagine doing that every day, every week, every month to go and pick up your medicines from the hospital pharmacy? What you find as well is if you're delivering a medicine to a patient in their home, rather than asking the patient to go and pick them up, you increase the efficacy of the medicines, and patients tend to be more compliant. The evidence shows this when the home care companies collect the data to show the amount of patients that are taking their medicines in the correct way at the correct time. it shows that you're a lot more compliant. A patient is a lot more compliant than actually relying on the patient to go into that secondary care environment. It improves the cost efficiency for the NHS. So, that there'll be a lot of taxpayers on this call today, or former taxpayers, and we know how expensive the NHS is to run. But the NHS, for them to actually run these home care services, is quite logistics heavy. And the NHS are not specialists in medicine delivery, or actually delivering medicines in a home and having a nursing staff to deliver those medicines in a home environment. So the home care companies can actually support those people that support the NHS in doing this. And by doing this, it really, really does free up the resources for the NHS. So those doctors, those nurses, those pharmacists, we're not having to employ a whole new segment of the NHS that actually delivers the drugs to the patient at home. And also, we're not employing nurses or taking nurses away from the hospital environment that have to go to the home for those medicines to be delivered. So, this really does help the NHS free up their precious resources and their precious time. And, it has helped out with the COVID period as well. Those deliveries of those medicines would have been a logistical nightmare for the NHS, but the home care companies really supported through that difficult period. Okay, so I'm just going to explain sort of 3 types of journey where medicines would be delivered in the home environment. So it is for the more complex therapy areas. So I suppose one of the least complex of the therapy areas that home care companies tend to look at is rheumatoid arthritis. So if you have rheumatoid arthritis, one of the medicines that you receive is an injection, and you could be taking that injection, for instance, weekly. So what a home care company will do is arrange for, say, 1 to 2 months worth of that medicine to be delivered to you, but also they deliver it to you in the environment that it needs to be delivered. So that actual medicine that they'll be using in rheumatoid arthritis needs to be refrigerated. So the delivery will be refrigerated. It's not like an Amazon delivery where you can leave it on the front doorstep, because they are medicines, they're controlled. We need a signature from the patient. So the home care companies arrange a time for that medicine to be delivered, and that medicine is put in the patient's hands, but also the patient understands and is educated that medicine needs to go in the fridge and stored in the correct way. But also the home care companies will make sure that they're communicating regularly with the patient to understand what stock levels they've got. So if there is a failure in delivery for whatever reason, for instance, severe weather, etc., and the delivery doesn't come through, the patient has a stockpile of those medicines. So that's probably the most simplistic type of medicine delivery that home care companies do. Another type is getting a little bit more complicated. So if we think about someone that's living with cancer, that oncology patient, and they might be on chemotherapy. So when you're receiving chemotherapy, one of the first things that we need to do as a home care organisation is understand how much of the chemotherapy drug that you need and how we need to mix it, and in what dose you need it. And for the home care company, for the pharmacists that work for the home care company to work that out, we need to take the patient's bloods. So a nurse will go around up to 72 hours before the chemotherapy treatment is due and take that patient's bloods. The home care company will take it back to their pharmacist. The pharmacist will look at those results. They'll then mix the chemotherapy drug. That chemotherapy drug will then be delivered to the patient's home, and then the nurse will then actually go and administer that chemotherapy drug to the patient in their home environment. And this is a fast-moving area within home care. When you think, I'm sure some of you have had family members or had cancer yourself, and having to go into a hospital, sometimes quite often within a month, every week, etc., to have your chemotherapy delivered. For some patients, that can be very, very disruptive to their lives. Having the ability to have a chemotherapy drug delivered in your home gives the ability for patients to carry on with their life as normal as possible. And then finally, we have rare diseases. So these are diseases where you will have a very small amount of patients within a population that require this drug. And what the home care companies will actually do is they will sort out the logistics of picking that drug up. A lot of these drugs are actually made by small pharma biotech companies in America. So we actually, as a home care organization, we would get the drug from America and then distribute it to basically any patient around the world that requires that drug, but also educate, train, identify nurses and doctors that can deliver that drug to that patient anywhere around the world. I've got a short video that probably explains this a little bit better. It's about 5 minutes long, but it just gives you an idea of how complex home care delivery can really be. Just bear with me while I...
Progeria is a rare genetic disorder causing rapid aging in children. Life expectancy is about 15 years. Sciensus is dedicated to connecting people with rare conditions like progeria through bespoke digital communities. These online communities enable people and their families to advocate and support one another in a secure, safe environment, regardless of geography or language.
"29-year-old Sami Basso is one of around 400 people in the world living with Hutchinson-Gilford syndrome or progeria, and is its oldest survivor. As an ambassador for and an expert on this rare accelerated aging disease, he is a role model for other patients.
I'm the oldest patient with progeria known in the world. So younger patients can say, okay, he is a researcher, he did the university, so I can do something in my life.
His profile-raising work via the Progeria Research Foundation is made possible through sheer drive and a breakthrough drug he helped to trial. Sciensus, a leading pharma services business, assisted him in accessing the drug.
I'm in Italy, and so it is one of the Western countries, so things should be very easy. It is not easy also in Italy to have this drug, and Sciensus provided a great help to have it.
Sciensus also works with the Progeria Research Foundation to ensure that patients feel supported whilst undergoing treatment.
The key focus for Sciensus is its connectivity, creating digital pathways for patients to reach out to each other, setting up support programs to help them manage treatments more effectively, and getting those life-enhancing medicines to hard-to-reach patients worldwide.
Sciensus is in the business of making sure that patients can access medicines, patients who live with a rare disease, but we also believe that just giving drugs to patients is not enough, so we implement services to enhance health outcomes beyond the simple utilization of a medicine. We speak to patient organizations, patient advocacy groups, KOLs, patients themselves when we can, to understand their lived experience and to understand what is important to them and how we can help them address those needs.
The company not only ensures rare and orphan medicines are available, but also uses its patient support programs to gain insights into helping people get the most out of their medication. And true to its ethos of building connections for patients, it partnered with the Progeria Research Foundation to create a bespoke online community to connect people living with progeria, their families and consultants.
We've co-designed Progeria Connect in collaboration with the Progeria Research Foundation. So this is an online community bringing patients and their family together on a platform which comprises information, but also the ability for people to talk to one another, in particular supported with automatic translation features.
Families can firstly understand that they are not alone, and psychologically it is fundamental. It is really fundamental. They can understand that their sons or daughters can be involved in this world. They are not people with a disease. They are people. then there is the disease. So I think Progeria Connect is pivotal for letting them to understand this point.
The holistic digital approach developed by Sciensus ensures that patients are supported throughout their health journey to have a better quality of life once they're on the right medication.
I'd like patients to understand that we're not only here to connect them with their medicine for their long-term rare conditions, but that we're also here to support them to get the best out of their treatment.
Okay, so firstly, I do apologise. That was all, very, very Sciensus heavy, but I do work for Sciensus, and it is something that the home care organisations, a lot of them do offer now, connecting patients across the board. You can see there that we're trying to build communities where patients get to know each other. We can also share educational material across the home care companies share educational materials around different therapy areas, so patients can engage with their disease better and we can have better outcomes for the NHS. Okay, so just thought I'd talk about how the NHS chooses which home care company to deliver with, because it's the taxpayers' money. And we have to go for, as a home care organisation, we have to go for a very robust area. So the therapy area within an NHS trust will feel that their patients would benefit from having a home care service, their medicines delivered and also those associated service, nursing support, etc. So what they will do is they will actually put out a prior information notice. That's basically just a notice to say that actually we're looking for someone, the NHS has to say that we're looking someone in renal services to support this kidney disease with these medicines, with this group of patient. And then that will go out to the various home care organisations. We then have to fill out a selection questionnaire that then goes back to the NHS commissioners, and they will look at it. They'll look at the answers. They have a very robust scoring system, and from that point, there's a selection of home care companies are invited to tender, and that tender document is a very, very complex document with certain regulatory information in there, standard information that we have to present to the NHS to prove that we have the ability to support those patients in that therapy area. We're then invited along to go to do several presentations. They also interview us, look at our organisation, and finally the announcement is made of the winner. And these bids, when they're evaluated, really do follow what they call the MEET process, which is the most economically advantageous tender process. So they're really looking for value for money. The NHS really do drive that value for money, but also making sure that the patient safety is at the forefront of everything that they do. Okay, so once a home care organisation is approved to look after a therapy area within a hospital trust, what will actually happen is, if I talk about an individual patient journey, the consultant will then say, oh, actually, they'll discuss with the patient if the concept of home care, the concept of having your therapy delivered at home, your medicines delivered at home, and potentially also, some nursing support if your drugs need to be administered by a nurse at home. The patient is happy. The consultant will then refer that patient to the home care organisation. So it goes from NHS referral onto the prescription received. So we will receive a prescription for that drug and that patient. So we will actually need, we have within Sciensus, for instance, we have about 1,700 people, and about 500 of those are clinical people. So we have a big group of pharmacists that will then check what the consultant has written from a prescription point of view. We will then check that prescription to make sure the consultant hasn't made any mistakes, hasn't put too much dose on there, too little, etc., etc. And once that prescription is checked off, the patient, if it's their first time with us, we will then spend about half an hour to 45 minutes on the phone, setting up that patient so they understand how the home care process works. And yeah, we set them up on our system, and we arrange their first delivery. And if they're having a nursing visit, we will then arrange the first nursing visit as well. What I will say is the point of the consultant writing a prescription, we're still very much paper-based within the NHS. A prescription from a secondary care hospital normally on average takes 2 to 3 weeks to get to Sciensus from the NHS hospital. It's still quite a slow process, and the home care companies are really trying to support the NHS to become more digital, so we can actually receive those prescriptions via a digital means, which would make it a lot quicker. So once the patient is onboarded, the patient is then introduced. Normally, most of the home care companies are using an app now. You don't have to use the app, but you will receive emails or text messages telling you the time and date of your delivery. But also a lot of the home care companies have apps where it actually tells you how far your driver is from delivering your medicines. So those medicines will be delivered by a qualified driver. In Science's case, all the drivers are employed by us. We have our own fleet. So our drivers are trained to explain to the patient about how they need to store the certain drug that they're having. On the back of that, we also have certain therapy areas. So as you saw in the Progeria video, we actually create communities and education on the app. So patients also have information about their drugs and their disease at the touch of a button, which helps them become more engaged with their therapy area. And finally, because we know how often these patients are taking their medicines, how often they're reordering them, the average lifespan of a patient staying with Sciensus or the home care companies, this creates a lot of data that then the NHS can take back, and the pharma companies can take back to make their services better, their patient support programs better, and also the drugs better. So it's a real win-win-win situation for the NHS, for the patient definitely, and for the pharmaceutical companies that can actually improve their drugs on the back of the data that they're getting from the patients. All that data is anonymized, so they never, the NHS and the pharma companies never actually know individual patient names. They just know mass bits of data, so they can look at it and analyze it and use it to improve services and the drugs that they provide to the patients. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about Sciensus and our app. So we have about 60 to 70% of our people that we support within the NHS use our app. And like most home care companies, the app will show you when your delivery is coming. You'll be able to amend the delivery date. So if you're not going to be in, you could change it to another day, or the morning or the evening delivery time. It will also let you put in there the amount of stock that you've got of your medicines. So to make sure if there is an adverse event, for instance, if it's snowing or the delivery can't get through, you have a buffer stock just in case. And also, if your prescription needs to be renewed, it will remind you and tell you that you need to get in contact with your hospital to get that prescription updated and where that prescription is within the system to make sure that you're never short of your medication. The other things that it can do is you can set reminders again, so reminding you when to take your medicines, so you don't miss anything, because as we know, a lot of these medicines need to be taken at certain times of day, and it's important that you do this on a regular basis. Again, you can set yourselves goals within different therapy areas, but also, sentiment tracking. We can look at different therapy areas, and groups of patients will mark out how they're feeling with their medicines, how they're feeling with their pain levels, etc., in certain therapy areas. And this gives us data again around how cohorts of patients are feeling with their medicines or their certain therapy areas, meaning that the NHS can support those patients better. The drug companies can get more education around it. The patient advocacy groups can look at that data as well and get more information on how they support their patients better. And then finally, we've got some scores. So it's called an EQ 5D 5L health questionnaire. It's the standard questionnaire that the NHS use for all their therapy areas. And patients can fill this out on there. And then again, this gives a wealth of information to the NHS about, individual therapy areas and how the cohorts of those patients are feeling about their mobility, their general mental health, their, knowledge around their drug areas, which just gives the NHS and those patient advocacy groups that work with the NHS more information on how they can support those patients better going forward. I've almost finished, guys. I'm just going to put a couple of slides in, just because Sciensus, the organisation that I work for, is the biggest home care provider in the UK. I just wanted to give you an understanding of what the home care companies do and why we do it. So, we're really there to give the patients control of your health through, your knowledge of your disease area, the choice of the drugs that you have, the convenience and the connection that you have with the community of the therapy area that you're within. Now, at the moment, we're probably looking at that we have about 70 million patient interactions per year. We look after, it's actually gone up, we look after about 250,000 patients, NHS patients. We have about 1,600, it's actually gone up, 1,700 colleagues that work within Sciensus. 500 of them would be clinical. So that's, pharmacy staff, nursing staff, doctors that work within the NHS, to work within Sciensus to support the patients. We have relationships with about 1,250 hospitals and clinics across the UK. A patient stays with us on average about 3.5 years, and we work in around 50 therapy areas. If you think that we're receiving probably about 2,800 to 3,000 new prescriptions every day, that need to be uploaded, and those medicines need to be brought into the system. So it's quite a big operation that we're supporting the NHS with. Finally, if you are a Sciensus patient, this is just, for patient safety. If you do have any concerns, any queries, or you have any adverse events around the medications that you're taking and you need support, please use this telephone number, or please go to Sciensus on the web. If you're a Sciensus patient, hopefully you'll know this telephone number off by heart or have it to hand. If you do get stuck, you can just Google us on the internet, Sciensus, and it will take you to our website, and you can contact us through there. So just before I finish, I just want to explain why I've come along today, and why I've put why I joined Sciensus. So this time 2 years ago, I was working for the National Rheumatoid Arthritis Society, which is the biggest national charity for rheumatoid arthritis in the United Kingdom, probably in Europe, actually. Sciensus were going through a period of change, and it meant that they were not supporting their patients in the best way that they could. And in my role working for that charity, I was head of services, and we had a lot of patients ringing us, a lot of issues with dealing with Sciensus. And I was spending a lot of time trying to rectify issues with Sciensus with the patient groups that we were supporting. And it wasn't just within rheumatoid arthritis, it was across many, many therapy areas. And that transpired that, Sciensus were not doing the best that they can for their patients. So after being with NRAS for a couple of years, and a lot of organisations bashing not just Sciensus but all the home care companies over the head, and asking them to improve, but the home care companies not really understanding the issue. I spoke to the senior leadership at Sciensus and said, look, guys, you need to do something. I've got some ideas. I think I know how we can help support patients better. So they offered me a job, and my job specifically within Sciensus is to be a disruptor. My job is to be the patient within the organisation. It's to improve that patient experience, to say, no, we cannot carry on treating patients like this, to understand those true problems and rectify them. And I've come away from working from a charity knowing that if I get my job right, I can affect a lot more patients across a lot more therapy areas than I ever could do working for a national charity. So that's the reason why I'm here. And that's the reason why I'm here today, because I know some of the patients on this call today will be Sciences patients, and we're not giving you the best service that we can. So, you know, if you do have issues, I'm here to listen, and I'm here to do my best to make sure that we cover off those issues, take them away, and try and resolve the root cause of those problems. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you for listening, and I believe it's time for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tim. A couple of questions from me first, and then we'll go to everyone else. So if someone hasn't got a mobile phone and they're not technically minded, how do they get on with all this technology?
Yeah, so I think, you know, we do live in a digital world, but we have to be aware that some people, you know, there is digital inequality, and it's again one of the reasons why I'm at Sciences is that we need to make sure that the patients that don't want to use digital technology for whatever reason still have access to the services. And we have a helpline team of 180 colleagues that work, you know, every day of the week to support people on the phone. So as long as you've got access to a phone, we can speak to you on the phone. And we have about 20 to 30% of our patients still use the helpline for the booking of the medicines or any issues that they have. So that facility is there. And what actually happens, Pete, is the patient doesn't proactively call us. We know when that next delivery is due, and we ring the patient. And, you know, we'll ring the patient, we'll leave a message, we'll write to them, we'll email them saying, we're trying to get hold of you to sort out your next delivery. Please give us a call. And when we speak to them on the phone, you know, that's when we'll arrange the call. So you don't have to use the app. You can use a telephone-based system.
So we have got a question about that when your company or the delivery company calls the customer,
Yep.
They ask for their name, date of birth, their home address, and
Yep.
they don't feel that is good security for them.
So
it could be anyone calling them.
Yeah, you're right. So if you look at our patient information, it's unfortunately, because it's because medicines are controlled, people try and trick us fraudulently. So the guidance from the NHS, the guidance from the Department of Health, and the GDP guidance is that we have to get that information. If patients are uncomfortable with doing that way, it tells them in our patient literature to decline the call or say, I'm not going to speak to you, and then ring Sciences back on the Sciences number and then give the information, because then the patient is in control. They know that they have rung Sciences. We are obliged by law to make sure that we're speaking to the right person. Again, we have people, you know, patients that we deal with where their mothers, brothers, sisters live with them, but they don't actually know that they've got an illness. So we have to make sure, that's one of the reasons why we have to make sure that we're speaking to the correct person, but also that we're actually delivering the drugs to the correct person. So yeah, if you have got an issue with that, just say, sorry, I'm not going to speak to you. I'm going to ring you back on the correct Sciences number. You'll be put through to the person, then we can commence our checks then. Okay.
Brilliant. Now, am I correct in saying that some kidney patients have to pay for their prescriptions if they go to a pharmacy, but if they have it delivered, it doesn't cost them any money at all?
This is very true. This is very true, Pete. And what I will say is the home care companies only work with medicines, complex medicines that are delivered through a hospital environment, for a secondary care environment. So if you're getting your kidney medicines through your GP on what they call an FP10, you will be having to pay for those medicines through your pharmacy system, unless you're exempt for whatever reason. But I know, Pete, you're going to start working with the Prescriptions Alliance, aren't you? Which is a group that I used to work with on NRAS, that are trying to get your type, you know, the type of conditions that your federation covers free, because they should be free, you know. So they're working on it. But yeah, speak to your hospital consultant. If you are having to pay for it, find out if you do qualify for a home care service. That would be my advice.
Yeah, because if you live in Wales, Northern Ireland or Scotland, prescriptions are free of charge. So,
yes.
Yes, it's something we're about to campaign as a big group, not just ourselves, to get kidney patients free prescriptions, because if you are on dialysis, you get it free, but some transplanted patients do have to pay prescriptions. Another question, is this available in Wales?
Yeah, so home care companies operate in all the nations and the devolved nations, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. Yeah, so we deliver drugs as home care industry in all the nations. So yes, it's definitely available in Wales.
Another question just come in. I've been with your company for 17 years, preferred it when it was called Healthcare at Home, which is a very sensible name. Don't find the app very helpful. Your staff are much better to deal with. Recently, deliveries have been good. So good, bad there.
So I think, I always take the good, but I will focus on the difficulty around the app. So I'll put my hands up. The app isn't where it needs to be. And one of the jobs that I've actually been brought on to do is get a group of patients together that can help us working on the app development. So what we tend to do at the moment, and this would be across all the home care industry, what we tend to belly watch. We tend to think we know what the patient wants rather than going out and asking. So one of the things that I've been tasked to do is bring a focus group together of people that, like the person that's just written, that doesn't particularly like the app, and work with us to tell us how we can improve it and test the improvements that we make. So my ask of that person is, if you're happy, please email Pete, and Pete can send you the details to me, and I'll get you involved in that focus group so you can start working to help us improve our app. Okay.
Another question. I've just tried to log into your site and it won't accept my details.
Okay, so if you're having issues logging in, the first thing that you need to do is call our helpline. If you give our helpline a call, they'll be able to help you out with the login issues. Okay.
A suggestion to save a phone, a number in your phone when it rings, and then you'll know who's calling. Yes. So what they're saying is, do you withhold your number when you call, or is it from a?
We don't, and we're not in control of the telephone networks or the telephones that you buy. So, for instance, if you have an Apple mobile phone, the number tends not to come up. But if you have an Android phone, the number will normally come up with Sciensus, or as we used to be called, Healthcare at Home. But yes, you can save the number. And depending on the mobile phone network that you're on, it will come through. But again, I'll just reiterate, if you're not happy that we are who we say on the end of the phone, just put the phone down, ring us back, and then you're safe in the knowledge you're speaking to Sciensus.
No, if you have got any questions for Tim or any feedback that you want to go through me, I've just put my email address in the chat. So it's pete@kidney.org.uk. Any more questions before we finish this session? Stick your hand up as well if you want, and we'll go live. Sounds like you've either stunned them into silence, Tim. You've answered all their questions.
So as Pete said, if you've got any, Pete, I saw your name in that, your email address in the chat. Please, contact the National Kidney Federation. Pete is, he knows that he can pick up the phone to me or email me. If you are having issues, let us know, because if I don't know about your issues, we can't resolve it. What I will say is, if it is a medical issue, make sure you're speaking to Sciensus straight away, or your consultant, or 111. That's most important. Your safety comes first.
And someone said they're happy to be included in the focus group. So yeah, if you want to jot that email down, Tim.
I will. Tracy, I will be in contact. Thank you very much.
And if anyone else would like to be part of the focus group, the goods, the bads, anything else, email myself if you want, or go direct to Tim. But it'd be great to have a kidney perspective as well in this.
Brilliant.
So if there's no more questions,
Oh, Julie's got her raised hand.
go on then, Julie. Let's go live.
Sorry, I'm really, really late to join the party. I've been travelling home, but I'm really new to this. I was just I found out in my online clinical record that I've got CKD and no one had told me. Apparently, I've had it for 2 years and no one had told me, which is really common, so I understand. I would love to be involved in any focus groups. I've got a background in community engagement and consultation, so if you need any support with that. And also I work in the NHS. I'm a commissioner in the NHS.
Okay, brilliant.
Nothing to do with kidneys and nephrology, but I'm a commissioner for learning disability and autism services.
Okay.
But whatever I can do to support you, I absolutely will.
Brilliant. Julie, could you send Pete your details? Is that all right? Thank you.
I certainly can. Thank you.
And Julie, about your CKD, if you want any information at all, please call our helpline, go on our website, because you've got a diagnosis of CKD doesn't mean dialysis or transplantation.
Absolutely.
So, find more information out.
I've done a lot of research. It's what I do. I'm a FOB librarian as well, so I do a lot of research. I've just published a newsletter in our an article in our internal newsletter, and I'm educating the rest of the ICB about it. So I've got everyone's ear at work.
Fantastic.
So that's got to be helpful.
Yeah, I've just put
I'm doing the
email
Hadrian's
address.
Wall walk in September as well.
I've
Well
just
done,
put my
Julie.
email address in there again so people can see it. So if you want to jot it down, Julie, and send me an email, I'd love to hear from you as well.
Will do. Phew, I'm just pleased I arrived before you disappear.
I did see some late ones come in, and I thought hopefully we could grab you. So any more questions before we do close this webinar? No, if that's the case.
Just to say thank you. Thank you for a very informative session. Thank you very much.
And do you use the service? Do you have home deliveries, Etty?
Well, I did, and I'm about to have some more again. I used to have Aranesp because my hemoglobin was down on the floor. So I had to have it every 2 weeks. And they've been really great. They deliver the yellow bin as well, and they collect it when they bring the next delivery. Yeah, it's really brilliant. Yeah, thank you. It was good to hear all the background and everything. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody, and
Brilliant.
have a nice evening. Tim, if you can stay on,
and you.
chat with you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks very much.